Well, hello and welcome to the e-commerce podcast with me, your host, Matt Edmondson. Now, this is a show that's basically here to help you deliver e-commerce wow. And to help us do just that, today we are chatting with Anna Fratwell from Neon Digital Clicks about mastering multi-channel marketing with a slight bent on how we do that to families. Oh yes, I am looking forward to this one. We're going to get into it. But before we do, let me just remind you, if you haven't done so already, to subscribe, I can't even talk, to subscribe to the e-commerce podcast newsletter. It's just really simple. Head over to the website, eCommercePodcast.net, fill out the little email thing, and we will send you the newsletter every week. And things like the show notes, the links, the key insights from the guests, they all come straight to your inbox, totally for free every week. It's a great little newsletter, so make sure you subscribe to that. And also, I want to give a big shout out to the amazing e-commerce cohort, which is the whole reason we can bring you this e-commerce podcast. Oh, yes, it is. They enable, well, I say they, the e-commerce cohort, if you don't know, is our mastermind. It's like our membership group that you can be a part of. Prices start from just $17 a month, it's cheap as chips, but you learn a lot. We've got workshops, we've got coaching, I mean, there's all kinds of things in there. So if you're involved in e-commerce, you are definitely going to want to check that out. And you can find out more information at ecommercecohort.com. That's ecommercecohort.com. Check it out. We'll see you in there. Now, let's talk about today's guest, shall we? We are talking to Anna Fratwell. Yes, we are. The marketing maestro with a knack for making e-commerce brands shine. Especially, as I said, in the whole family and even, dare I say, I should probably whisper, women's wear realms. And no one, and no. She absolutely refuses to believe that anyone over 25 years have zipped by in their marketing adventures. Oh yeah, she's a digital wizard at conjuring up growth spells through the mystical arts of paid traffic and email marketing. Her secret power is making brands go from unnoticed to unmissable. Oh yes, Anna, great to have you on the show. Thank you for joining me. How are we doing today?
Thank you so much for having me here. And yeah, no, all's good. I love the intro. Thank you for that. That was a brilliant start.
I wish I could take credit for it, but I genuinely can't. That is the production team. I have no doubt working their secret magic powers. But that said, I mean, it's, you know, this is what you do, isn't it? You are called Neon Digital Clicks. And you know what, Anna, let me just start by saying that 98% of people that consume the content of this podcast do it in an audio format, right? So they listen to it, say, on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Occasionally, we have people either watch on YouTube. I think there's about 400 odd people that watch on YouTube. And we also do, you know, the usual sort of reels, Instagram reels and things like that. So we have a few people that watch on video, but most people are listening. The reason why I'm mentioning this is because your company is called Neon Digital Clicks. And I feel like you have got this neon background thing pretty much set up. I feel like I'm back in a 1980s sort of something. I'm not quite sure. And we've got in the background, "We glow together." In a neon form, so I think it's great.
You're supposed to then go straight into Greece and start singing songs from Greece. That's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to get an earworm now.
Just as long as I know what I'm supposed to. Here's the thing, and full disclosure, Anna, no one, not even the angels want to hear me sing. Right? It's just. If my wife is to believe, it's something that is not blessing humanity in any way.
Okay, well, you can stick with the earworm then. You'll have it all day.
Absolutely. Whereabouts in the UK are you?
We're kind of just between Bath and Salisbury, so southwest.
Okay. Yeah, down south. We like down south.
Nice part of the world, yeah. Just outside Longley, actually. That's usually our marker. We can quite often hear the lions sometimes. So.
Ooh, roar. For those that don't know, there's a big safari park, isn't there, in Longley?
Yeah.
And,
huge safari park.
Yeah. You just don't have lions roaming around in your garden.
No, we're not in some kind of stately, bizarre Tiger King.
Well, it's good to know. Yeah, it's good to know. It'd be an interesting. I say interesting. I don't think it would be as interesting. Longleat versus the Tiger King or whatever it was. But yes, no, fascinating. Well, so you're with a company, Neon Digital Clicks. Is that your company, or is that a
Yes,
company you're
it
part
is.
of?
Nope, that's my company.
And how
Yeah.
long has it been floating around?
So probably about 5 years now. We've kind of last 3 years we've scaled quite significantly, but yeah, total 5 years now. We're a small team of specialists within kind of each field of the marketing mix that we deliver for our clients. So
Yeah.
it's yeah, about 5 years, and we've grown quite a lot in the last three.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? The whole world has changed in the last sort of 3 years,
I
really.
know.
And it sort of intrigues me. Neon Digital Clicks, it's a marketing agency, I'm guessing, just from the the title, and also what we're going to be talking about, to be fair.
Yeah.
Is that something that you've been involved with for a while, or did you just wake up one day and thought, you know what, I'm just going to start a marketing agency?
No, so I mean, I've worked in marketing for sort of 25 odd years, and I started out actually in PR and worked for some of the world's biggest ad agencies, working in PR, and then worked in house for a couple of companies. And I think one of the things that traditionally, back 25 years ago, which was quite frustrating about PR, was that, it was very difficult to kind of prove your
Yeah.
worth within that mix. And it was always kind of a challenge. I mean, we're talking back then, we were getting rulers out and measuring the content within a magazine to then try and put some advertising cost against it to prove, that article would have cost this as an ad and things like that. So that was always kind of a big frustration. And I remember setting up a Facebook page for a big retail company that I was working for. And it was kind of the start of the moment at which I started to become really passionate about digital marketing and what could be achieved through digital marketing. And
Yeah.
kind of that's where it started. And then fast forward a bit, I had my second child about 5.5 years ago. And it was that point at which I thought, do you know what? I've always wanted to set up my own thing. Now is the opportunity to take everything I've learned and gathered through working in some really big agencies, working in-house, and actually, what was it that I loved about that? What was it as someone in-house that I didn't like about working with agencies? What did I do? What did I like about working with agencies? And now it's my opportunity to create something myself. So that's what I did.
Oh, well done. It's it's quite a common story for a lot of agency owners. It's like, oh, I did this, but I just wanted to do it myself, and I thought, why not give it a go? Had what Michael Gerber calls an entrepreneurial seizure, which I think is such a great phrase. And away you go. So here we are, some sort of 5 years later. I'm curious, right? Because you said that you did a lot of PR. There's a phrase which I have heard banded around a lot recently, and I'd love your insights, your thoughts on this. And that phrase is digital PR. We should be investing in digital PR. Now, I know that's not the title of the podcast, but I'm kind of curious. This is your background. What is digital PR, and is it something that I really need to think about?
For me, I mean, we don't actually do any digital PR within the agency, but for me, it kind of ties very closely in with things like SEO, and it kind of, if we're working with a client that is hot on their SEO and they're working with a digital PR agency as well, as one that's kind of doing it offline as well, we will see improved performance. It's kind of that overall multi-channel mix that just enhances and leverages everything for a client. And I think that, if you've got people who are coming across your brand because they've read it in an article online, or they've picked it up through a blog or something like that, because of the efforts of a digital marketing team, a digital PR team, it's only going to help through, tie in and help with your efforts on Google Ads and things like that. So yeah, I think it's one of those things, isn't it? Is, you've got to assess. There are so many things you can do. Where are you going to start? Where are you going to stop? And one of the things that I'm kind of quite passionate about is making sure you've got all the foundations ready before you start putting money into something. And then when you do start to put money into something, making sure that you do that thing well and not spreading yourself too thin, across, it's that shiny object syndrome and thinking, oh my goodness, do I need to be on TikTok? Let's head over to TikTok now. Or do I need to be here? I haven't got a Pinterest page. Maybe I'll set, do your core things really, really well and then build from there. And that's
so what would you say the core things are for you? I mean, it's sage advice, and I'm kind of curious, in the sense of, if you're going to do core marketing activities, what are the core marketing activities every e-commerce business should be thinking about?
Yeah, so I mean, we have kind of like a process that we'll go through, and it's part of our conversations that we have with leads when they come through, and we get on that first call to do a bit of it, kind of digging in to find out what they're about, what their goals are, and things like that. And one of the things, so we'll kind of look at their website, make sure that that's really well optimized, make sure that their conversion rate is strong and it's a good conversion rate and it's ready for sending traffic to. So that's kind of number one. If you've not got a great conversion rate, or if your conversion rate needs some work to it, don't start spending money on anything to try and get more traffic there. Focus there first. So that's kind of step one. And then we're kind of talking about broadening out those foundations. And that does include things like SEO. It does include things like making sure you've got a really good email marketing platform set up. So we work with Klaviyo, making sure that that's integrated, making sure that all those basic flows are set up and ready for you to then, when you are spending money and sending traffic to your site, you're using every possible opportunity to either capture someone for a later date if they don't make an instant conversion, or convert them to a sale then and there. So they're kind of like the foundational elements we look at. And then from our point of view, where we see the most success is a combination of Google Ads and Facebook ads together, to kind of use them as almost like Facebook as that top of funnel awareness driver, and then Google as that kind of recapture, as well as a bit of kind of picking people up who are actively searching for something that you've got to sell to them. So that's kind of the combination that's worked really well for us, is making sure that we've got a really solid Facebook ad strategy, Google ad strategy, and then underpinning that with some email marketing as well.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? You talk about this as the sort of the foundations. I think you're right. I think having an optimized website is a good place to start, because I remember one client came to us and said, listen, what do you think to our business? And I looked at what they were doing. I looked at what their competitors were doing. I'm like, well, your competitors are selling 10 times as much as you, from what I can gather online. And he's like, well, okay, so to increase our volume by tenfold, I need to increase my ad budget by tenfold, don't I? And I'm like, yeah, no, not at all. I'm like, first and foremost, before you spend any money on increasing ads, you've got to look at your conversion rate. So the conversion rate for you is like a fifth of what it is for your competitors. So they're maybe spending twice as much on advertising, but overall they're getting 10 times as many sales. And a lot of that is down to their website. You can be better off, rather than spending an extra 30 grand on ads, investing in your website and getting your conversion rate sorted. It was a very difficult conversation for him to hear, because ads, it's easy, isn't it? In a lot of ways, you kind of go, well, I need more sales, therefore I will increase my spending on ads, because it's easy, it's quick, and you can outsource that to an agency and you go, well, you just double my sales, there you go. Whereas increasing website conversion, whilst there is science behind it, there's also an art involved, and it's not as straightforward, right?
Definitely. And it's also things like, some of the conversations that we'll have in that initial call with someone is just making sure that they've got a really solid understanding of those numbers as well. And, what are your margins? Are your margins strong enough to sustain an ad campaign and spend that needs to go towards that ad campaign? And, are you maximizing your average order value and things like that, to make sure that when someone lands, that your conversion rate is strong, but you're also getting them to spend the most you can possibly get them to spend, so that cost per click that you've got then just kind of transforms. Yeah,
absolutely. And then when you've done that, yes, we can start to talk about increasing ad spend, like with AdWords and Google Ads and things like that, which is great. And I think it's very sage advice. And underpinning that, you had email. Interesting you chose Klaviyo, which seems to be the thing that 98% of ecom businesses are using now. I don't know what the exact number is, but Everyone I talk
Yeah.
to is now using Klaviyo. Is there a reason you chose Klaviyo over other platforms?
Yeah, I mean, we've tried other platforms. Klaviyo for us is just incredibly intuitive. It's built for e-commerce. We're able to do so much more with it. We see great deliverability with Klaviyo as well. So we are just, when we compare, I'll quite often say if we've got someone on MailChimp or something like that, and we talk to them about taking them over to Klaviyo, I'm always entirely confident that they'll make that money back in terms of the extra cost it will cost to go through Klaviyo very, very quickly, because the results we're seeing are so good.
Yeah, it's really, really powerful point. I'm smiling because I was having a conversation with somebody yesterday, a good friend of mine. He's not involved in e-commerce, but we're two old men sat in a restaurant eating, catching up with each other, haven't seen each other for a little while, and we're just having a gab. And we got onto the conversation of Zoom, because obviously Zoom, I mean, in the pandemic, if it was ever good for a company, it was good for Zoom, right? I mean, it just came seemingly out of nowhere and changed the world in that sort of sphere and become the market leader. And we were talking about that, and he made a really interesting point. He's like, well, where was Skype? Microsoft bought Skype. They had all this money behind it, but where was Skype? And it kind of feels a little bit, I'm saying now, well, where was MailChimp? And Klaviyo seems to have been this new kid on the block that I know it's been around for a little while, but it seems to now be the market leader where you kind of go, well, that was MailChimp's domain because everybody used MailChimp years ago.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, they've not innovated and they've not kept up. And it just seems like more and more people are switching to this other platform.
I think you're right. And I think it's almost like they are starting to innovate, but not at the pace at which they need to innovate either. And I think there's so much more that's kind of happened with the likes of Klaviyo in terms of integrations. We can integrate Klaviyo seamlessly with Facebook ads, and we can kind of share that data. And there's no need to bring in like Zapier or anything like that to push data between two platforms. So for us, it's kind of, it just makes everything far more streamlined, far more effective when we're combining multiple platforms together for an end goal for a customer.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is interesting. Yeah, interesting that everyone seems to be going down that road.
Yeah,
which is good. I use Klaviyo myself on or Klaviyo. Is it Klaviyo or Klaviyo? I don't know.
I don't know. Tomato. Who knows?
But we use it ourselves for our own e-com businesses. So we've used MailChimp. We've used just about all of them, I think, over the years. And Klaviyo seems to be the one that we sort of stuck with at the moment. For now, until I test drive another one, I'm sure at some point. The tech team hate it. Oh, Matt, not another email platform. So let's talk about multi-channel marketing. Let's talk about it specific, because at the start, when we were talking about this, we said we're going to talk about mastering multi-channel marketing. And I said with a specific bent on family. Because that's what you guys are pretty hot on. Well, I mean, this seems to be one of the things you, as an agency, sort of got into that whole sphere of things, right?
Yeah, sure. So I think it kind of naturally happened initially in that, as a parent, we were talking to parent brands, and over time, it's where we've kind of honed our craft, as it were, and that's where we kind of specialize. And it's a really interesting sector to work in, because I think, what's great is, I mean, between us in the agency, I think we did a head count the other day, and I think we've got like 14 kids. So we kind of we can understand, no matter what the problem is that parent might be having, someone can put themselves in their shoes.
Yeah.
So that's kind of brilliant. And it just being able to talk to a client who's got a family brand, whether that's kind of a baby product, a kids product, whatever it is, being able to talk to them in the language that their customer is talking is just amazing. But also from like a multi-channel marketing perspective, we obviously, we know what it's like as parents, how distracted we are. If we take one of the brands we work with is a sleep aid for babies, and I myself had a baby that did not sleep, refused. Sleeping was for kind of wimps. We're not going to do that. And the amount of stuff that I bought in the middle of the night while scrolling Facebook, and it's things like that, and being able to kind of go, okay, let's test sending emails at 2 o'clock in the morning, because there might be parents just desperately trying to distract themselves, keep themselves awake, and they will, be hooked in quite easily to something that really talks to that particular pain point in that moment. So there's lots of strategies that we're able to kind of hook onto, because they're born from experience as well. But from a multi-channel marketing perspective, it's making sure that, you know what it's like as a parent. You're really highly distracted. You can be, I don't know, finding a quiet space to just have a scroll and just go, right, it's a moment for me. I'm just going to scroll through here. And then next thing, it's either gone deathly quiet in another room, so that you need to go and have a look at what's going on.
Charcoal patterns on the wall are going to appear or something. We've got an issue.
Or someone screams, and it's because the siblings push the other one over, and then you get distracted and you've stopped what you're doing. So that's why retargeting, and it's quite interesting when we dig into kind of Google and look at kind of the touch points to a sale and how many touch points it's taking to get customers through to a sale when you're looking at different products. And it can sometimes be longer on some of the products where, it is a product where you can tell that there's just so much going on in their lives, or they're scrolling before they go and pick up a kid from the school run, and all of a sudden the bell goes, so they've got to get out of their car, and it's things like that. So it's quite interesting in terms of what we can kind of think about from a strategy point of view.
That's really insightful, isn't it? Because I love this idea of targeting mums who are awake in the middle of the night with sleep aids for kids. I think that's genius. And we're just about to launch a new beauty brand, another ecom business of ours. We're going to do a little beauty brand type thing, and I'm like, it's really interesting. I'm just sitting there thinking, I'm actually tempted to tell the marketing team, why don't we just test Facebook ads at 2 o'clock in the morning when it's the least competitive in the UK, and just talk to new mums about, skincare or something like that. Whether that, maybe they don't want to hear about skincare at 2 o'clock in the morning, but it's one of those things, isn't it, where we're all trying, I think, to target ads and to get people's attention, and we're all doing it between 9 and 5. Right, there's these boundaries, but actually what you're talking about here is thinking outside of the box a little bit and thinking more in line with your consumer and when they're going to be consuming content.
Exactly that, and it's essential. Certainly so far as email goes, it's there's so much. I know my inbox is rammed, and there's so much. You've got to cut through that inbox. It's about cutting through the feed. How can you on Facebook? How can you create that cut through? How can you be the ad that stands out against everyone else? And again, with an inbox, it's the same thing. How can you be the email that they go, oh, I'm just thinking about that. That's what I need.
Yeah.
And like I say, the amount I spent on sleep aids the first year of my husband would be like, what are we trying now? What are we doing?
We're going to do what? And you're like, don't talk to me, don't ask any questions. I have not got any sleep. And the husband's like, sure, I'll sell the house, but whatever you want, that's what we're going to do. No, I've had 3. My kids are at the other end of the spectrum now. My 2 eldest are at uni. My young daughter's at 6th form, and so if they're having sleepless nights, I don't hear about it. It's one of those. No. But I still remember the days well, where that was a bit of a fraught time, especially with my daughter for the first 2 years, and we would have literally bought anything. Anything.
Well, and that's the thing, and the other thing is, no 2 children are the same either. I didn't realise what a dream sleeper my first was. Probably, fortunately, because I may not have had a second. But they definitely got that one the right way around. But so it's just, and we just learn it. So many of those experiences that we've had with children. So I've got one that's 11 and one that's 5.5, and you can just glean so much. And when you're looking at a team that's got approximately 12 to 13 children between us, we've all come into the mix with completely different life experiences, and working together cohesively to then go, actually, this is the angle, this is the need, this is the problem, let's talk to that.
And it's interesting how you mentioned that certainly I'm going to call the sector new mums, rightly or wrongly, but let's just, we're talking new mums, and you talk about, or maybe just mums in general, actually. It's a very distracted target audience, because they're just trying to find 30 seconds here and there. I'm picking up the kids, I'm on the whatever it is. You find your time, don't you? And it's easy to forget what you're doing because Johnny's crying or whatever. And so dealing with a distracted market rather than something that's hyper focused is an interesting challenge in itself. A few weeks ago, we had Neil Hoynes on the show. Now, at the time of recording this interview, Anna, it has not come out yet. It will be coming out soon, I think. Saying that, I don't think it's come out yet. I really should know my own schedule. But again, the production team, Orion Media, shout out to Orion Media, they're amazing. The production team take care of all of that. But Neil Hoynes is the chief strategy officer for Google, right?
Okay.
And his whole life is measuring data. And he was talking about how they measured for one lady who was buying a pair of shoes. Okay. Now, this is not a complex purchase. It's not like I'm buying a house or something that is super involved. It's a pair of shoes. And I appreciate people might be shouting at the phone now going, no, shoes are complex, Matthew. You're misunderstanding it.
Yeah.
In my head, shoes aren't complex, right? I have two brands I go to. I buy that one or that one. It's easy. But he was saying for this one lady that she had 236 points of connection with that company before the purchase. And he was like, this is email, this is Facebook ads, this is Google retargeting ads, this was ads on Instagram, this was coming to the website, reading a blog. Do you know what I mean? She would then stop, big obviously distractions or something was going on. And he was like, overall, there were 236 interactions before she actually put in her credit card details and purchased. And he's like, so who gets the sale? How do I attribute that sale?
Yeah.
And it's like, obviously the answer is it's virtually impossible to go, well, it was when she was looking at that Facebook ad that she actually went from being really interested to, yes, I've decided I'm going to.
Yeah, I've made my choice. I'm doing it.
And the reason I'm telling this story is because your distracted mum reminded me of it. There's a lot of these connections, which is why, let's talk about multi-channel marketing.
Yeah.
For me, multi-channel marketing now starts to make sense because in this hyper distraction going on, we have to connect sometimes 230 times before we get the sale.
Yeah. And if we don't focus our attention, do we? As humans, we're very much, quickly, even if you're not a distracted mum, you're kind of looking at something, then you're looking at something else. People are watching Netflix and watching their phone at the same time. There's so many things going on in our brains and in our environment that it then becomes even more important to be kind of in this multi-channel presence. But with the caveat of, I think it's really important to be doing them well. So don't go, okay, I need to be everywhere, so I'm just going to throw myself everywhere. Like, throwing yourself everywhere and doing that badly is not gonna work either. It's about making sure that what you do it really, really well, and then build out from there. But it's interesting, your point about the lady in the shoes, because we've worked with kids shoe brands in the past, and that's quite an interesting one as well, because if you think about it, we're all kind of as parents conditioned to go through the misery of going to somewhere like Clark's and sitting there for ages while you wait for your child's foot to be measured, because we all know that it's really important to have children's feet measured because they're growing and things like that. And it's quite an interesting one, because I think shoes in general are quite difficult to sell online, because you want to know how they fit and feel. Different shoes come in, they size differently per store and things like that. Some stores sell in European sizes, some stores go by the UK sizes and things like that. And then that was a brand also that required a lot of touch points, because it's not just from an adult's perspective, what size foot you are, and so therefore you kind of can make an educated guess on what size it is. You've got the added dimension of then being responsible for making sure your child is wearing the right size shoe, when we know actually that that's really important in those early years, is to have the right size shoe, because I mean, we all tell ourselves all sorts of things as parents. You could be damaging their feet if you don't get it right, and all of those things going on in your brain. So that again was another brand that required so many touch points in order to get the sale, because you were having to address so many different barriers to purchase. But one of the big things we knew was no one liked sitting in class for hours on end in a queue with a million other kids around them.
Oh, their snotty noses.
Get me out of here now. Kind of thing.
It's interesting, isn't it? But I'm thinking, I mean, we're talking a lot about shoes. The shoe company that I use has an interesting shoe sizing policy. And I'm always a little bit sketchy of it. But what they have you do now is you put a piece of A4 paper on the floor and you put your foot on it and you take a photo, and they're using the tech now to figure out the right shoe size for you. And which I think is interesting, isn't it? As tech unfolds, we can add this. And again, this comes back to website conversion. How do you help somebody buy? It's like, we're going to help you get the right size straight away. You know, no dramas, you know. And all you need is a picture of your foot, which is quite clever when you think about it, you know, and what you can do with that. So let's talk then about multi-channel marketing. It's very difficult, this phrase, multi-channel marketing. I want to say multi-level marketing, but it's not. It's multi-channel. So is it better to market in 4 channels really well than in 10 channels at a sort of mediocre level?
I'd argue yes. I mean, you don't want to, because the other thing is, you know, unless you've got infinite amounts of money to be spending on ad spend across as many channels as you like, you know, it's just no point watering down your ad spend and then not really achieving anything particularly well across anything. So you're better off kind of, and that's why we've got to this place where we are predominantly looking at that foundational piece, is your email marketing. Make sure that's set up, that you've got those automations in place to capture anyone at any part of their journey. And then layering that on with the real kind of awareness driver of Facebook ads, and then the kind of retargeting, the extra things that Google can do alongside Facebook ads. And together they work really well. I would argue that kind of we're seeing more and more success with things like TikTok as well, and layering that in. But again, I think that's really specific to the brand. And I think that you can either just smash it on TikTok, or you can be severely disappointed by what happens. And I think that's kind of making sure that your brand is fit for purpose when it comes to TikTok, really. So that's why our predominant focus has been on those 3 core areas, because it's where we've been able to take a brand and go, okay, let's get out there, let's test, let's now scale, and let's use these 3 platforms to be able to scale you up to where you want to be. And then once we've got a hold of that and we've got that working really well for you, now let's look at something else. And you know, there are so many things. You know, you look at SEO, which is again arguably really important. You look at things like Pinterest ads. They're all very long-term, slow burners, but they are important. But if you're looking for that kind of faster conversion and scale, they're the places that you kind of need to focus your attention from our experience.
Yeah. So if I'm a brand and I feel like we've reached a limit on those core ones. So let's take Google and Facebook. So let's assume they're our core foundational ones. Whether it's Facebook or Instagram or something in the metaverse, we should probably call it Meta rather than Facebook. Shouldn't we? Yes, so I've got my Meta ads running. I've got my Google ads running, and I kind of feel as a brand that I've reached the zenith, or the zenith for American cousins, the zenith of that sort of ad spend. And I come to you and I say, listen, I don't feel like we're getting we can get any, we've sort of wrung this dry. Do you A, believe me and go, right, you should try TikTok? Or do you B, go, can I have a look first? Because I'm not entirely sure. So before you go off and say, do TikTok, let's look at Google and Facebook, and you tend to find actually what most owners perceive about their Google Ads and Facebook is not actually quite correct.
Yeah, that one.
B.
That's what we tend to find is, and unfortunately, it kind of reminds me of the conversations that I have all too often with brands where they kind of say, oh, Meta doesn't work for me. And you go, okay, let me just have a look, see why you think Meta doesn't work for you. And, it may be that they've had a bad experience with someone who has set them up in entirely the wrong way. They're not optimizing the right things. They're not feeding enough creative into their campaigns. And, very much so now, more than ever, Meta is about creative iterations and making sure that you have not just volume of creative, but that there's diversity of creative as well. So quite often you'll look in an account where someone has said, it's just not working for us. And there's always opportunity and there's always something that can be done to improve that performance. I don't think we audit every business before we begin working with them. And I don't think we've ever audited a business where we've gone, actually, do you know what, you're right. You've nailed it. You've nailed Meta. You don't need us.
Yeah,
That's it. You've done it. You've completed Meta. Totally well done. On to the next one.
What would the next one be? So what are some of the other channels, we're doing, maybe we've not got it totally optimized and buttoned down, but we're doing okay with Google, Facebook, and I'm feeling confident now about branching out. What are some of the other platforms that should be on my hit list? I mean, you've mentioned TikTok. A lot of people are talking about TikTok at the moment. But what should I realistically be thinking about?
I do think it's really dependent on the brand and what you're selling. I think that, there's a lot to be said for TikTok and Pinterest. I think that you'd see a faster conversion from the likes of TikTok. It's a much faster kind of, you can think about, but again, TikTok's only going to work for you if you can produce the volume of creative. And if you're not able to keep up with that volume of creative, then don't start down that TikTok route at all. Pinterest, if you're talking about baby brands, a kids brand, you've got that opportunity where people are building boards on their nurseries and things like that. And that's a great opportunity to tap into that psyche of that customer and where they are on their journey as they head towards having their first child or something. So, they're great options. And it really, I believe, is specific to your product, your brand, and what you're trying to achieve. And going back to what we spoke about with digital PR, I think, that's a really valuable place to be. And I think that's kind of only by doing that, you are then putting yourself in a position where you're going to enhance performance on the channels that you're already putting paid traffic into. So it's kind of layering on an additional element that's going to enhance what you're already doing.
Very good. You talk about the volume of creative. And Meta needs volume and TikTok needs volume. Just explain for those that might not know what that means and what's involved with that.
Yeah, so it's ensuring that obviously it's dependent on ad spend. If you've got a really, really small ad spend, then you're restricted by how much creative that you can actually have running. But on most kind of accounts, you want to have a breadth of creative. So that's when we talk about volume of creative, we're talking about things like making sure that you've got static images, video, you've got carousels, you've got collection ads, you've got all sorts of different permutations of creative running in your account. But then equally, of those creations, you've got variations of them. So you've got different kind of variations of that same creative, but it has to be different enough for AI to actually go, or the AI in Meta to actually go, that is different. It's not the same. I can see that there's a difference between those two. Making sure that you're mixing kind of some very lifestyle creative and video with some more user generated creative and things like that. So you really are putting yourself in a position where the algorithm can feed creative and find the right user for that piece of creative, and then find the winning pieces of creative. And then you're able to learn from the data, learn from what's working, what isn't working, and then that can inform future choices and future decisions and what you do next.
That's going to be one of my questions, actually, because we're talking about the volume of creative going back 25 years, Anna, to when you were working for a large agency. The agency would run one ad. That's what they would run. They would put that ad in probably multiple magazines. It feels like this is quite different in the sense of I'm running 100 ads rather than one, and I'm now thinking, rather than trying to create one fantastic ad, I'm sort of spreading my resources to create 100 ads, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Why should I do that? Why can't I just create one ad and run with that one ad? Why do I need 100 different ads, for example?
It's a bit like saying that all your customers are the same people. They're not the same people. They're kind of different people with different, something that might appeal to you. It might be for the same product, might not appeal to me. And how are you going to convert two entirely different people to purchase the same product? It's by putting something different that's going to resonate with them in front of them. I think and it's all about these touch points as well, and it telling a story too. So, it may be that something catches your eye initially, and then I just had an idea of something that kind of plays into what I'm saying. As an example, there's a company called Merry People that sell wellies. I'm fascinated by their ads. Their ads
Merry People.
I
I'm going to go and
them
check them out
incessantly.
Okay.
So they have nailed creative variation. And it's brilliant. So you'll get one ad that will show you kind of how to wear the boots, how to style the boots. You'll get a next ad that will just hammer you with a visual, and then there'll be lots of testimonials alongside that visual. So it's a very simple cutout image, and it's got loads of testimonials. Then there'll be user-generated content. Then there'll be kind of a really beautiful stylized shot. Then there'll be something from the founder. And all the time you're building this picture of this brand, you're building this picture of this product, and you're kind of getting to a point where you're going, I want to be part of this. Because it's tackled your the consumer from so many different angles that ultimately you kind of feel infused into the brand. It's really, and it's what, they're not the only people doing it. Lots of people are doing it. I think they do it particularly well. And it's just so important as part of a strategy to not just go, oh, that's working, so that's what we're going to stick with. Because in order to scale and grow, you need that variant.
Yeah. No, I love that. I think I guess we have the technology now where if I go back 25 years and I'm picking up Vogue and there's an advert, that Vogue knows who's picked up the magazine. And so the advert changes accordingly. And so what it sort of shows an advert which is going to resonate more with whoever's picked it up rather than just one generic ad. And
definitely.
I get that. And I love how you talked about something I've not heard talked about much, actually, when it comes to Facebook ads, specifically Facebook ads, because I think Google, is more about the shopping side of things. But with Meta, the opportunity you have to communicate your brand story in a way that resonates with the customer, 100%. Rather than just going buy, here's a product, buy. But showing different sides of the company, showing different values, different brands, different, and educating the customer. So the customer almost feels like it knows you. And it's not even, the customer's not gone to your website. I think it's quite a clever idea. And I'm going to follow Merry People, the wellies. I'll follow them. I don't even need to say follow. I mentioned their name twice. Facebook will have heard it, and I dare say the ads will appear up on my in some kind of weird stalky way, and everybody listening to the podcast is now going to start getting these ads, and they're going to
we should have put an affiliate link on there, so we should be getting a kickback from this.
There's thousands of people all over the world now going to their website going, it's really interesting. No, that's fantastic. And I think, what tips, I'm aware of time, Anna, but we've opened up a can of worms here in a lot of ways. I'm kind of curious, what tips would you give people who are listening to the podcast and they're fairly new to e-commerce? So people like, say, me, take away my background, I'm starting a new skincare brand, right? What sort of things should I be thinking about? Let's talk about that person. And then I want to get your tips for the person that's like me, that has a big e-commerce brand over here that is functioning in all kinds of different ways. So let's start with the newbie.
So basics, making sure that you've kind of optimized your website, making sure that you've got your foundations in place when it comes to email marketing, and making sure that you're capturing emails and SMS. Knowing your numbers, because it's surprising how many people don't know their total margin. So they might know the margin on against cost per, the cost of the goods to buy, and then what they're selling it for, but factoring in all those other elements in your business that contribute to your margin, so important. And then making sure that you've got a really good, clear understanding of who your customer is and who is buying from you, so that you can then build out strategies that lean into finding more people that are like your existing customer to start and scale your brand.
Fantastic.
That's where I'd start.
Great. And the established e-commercer, as I like to call them.
Yeah, so if they're already running ads, they're generating a consistent turnover. From our perspective, it's making sure that those platforms are dovetailing into each other and working and supporting each other and doing what they should do. Some of the things we look at when we come to scale is things like, we'll have a brand that's saying to us, and one of our case studies is on a brand that we've been working with, where they had a great turnover, but they were just seeing the same turnover month in, month out. And we kind of looked into that to see what was going on, and actually identified that they had a great problem because people were repeat purchasing, but they weren't bringing in anyone new to the business. So our main strategy was about driving new customer acquisition whilst maintaining that customer loyalty. So that was the way to scale that brand, which we just kind of exploded it for them, because we were able to bring in lots and lots of new people. But we knew, because of the way they ran their business and how successful they were at repeat purchase, once we brought them in through the door, they were going to stick around. So that's how we scaled it. So I think it's about finding out what the bottlenecks are within your business, and what are the problems, and what are the things that are holding you back from taking it to the next level. So it's really difficult to come up with a one size fits all approach to the next steps, because it's going to be very different in each situation.
No, very good. Very good. Love that. Take notes, ladies and gentlemen. Sage advice. Anna, listen, I am really aware of time. If people want to connect with you, if they want to find out more about Neon Digital Clicks, if they just a few questions they want to run past you, what's the best way to get hold of you and see what you guys are up to?
Yeah, so we're really active actually on Instagram. So you can head over to us on Instagram. We're at Neon Digital Clicks there, or head to our website, which is neondigitalclicks.co.uk. We offer a free audit, so you can always jump in and we'll take a look at your business, see what's going on. So yeah, the best places are Instagram and our website.
Fantastic. Does Instagram work well for you?
Brilliantly. Yeah, it works really well. I kind of keep looking at other platforms, but it's where we kind of, it's kind of our, bread and butter, I'd say. It's where we get a lot of engagement, a lot of conversations happen. It's been a great platform for us.
Yeah, fantastic. See, most people normally, they come on the show, this podcast or the other podcasts that we have. I'm kind of addicted to podcasting, if I'm honest with you, but they come on the show and they'll normally share like their LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the most better. Find me on LinkedIn. Less and less people are saying, find me on Instagram, unless they've got like a personal brand. But you're an agency on LinkedIn doing well, which I find quite fascinating.
Yeah.
So, well, that's awesome. It's an unusual thing, but it's awesome. And so
we're on LinkedIn too. But we are on LinkedIn too. But I would say Instagram's where the good stuff happens.
That's where the magic happens, is on Instagram.
It is.
This show is not sponsored by anything to do with Instagram, just to be totally clear. Now, that's brilliant. Anna, listen, we will, of course, link to all of those things in the show notes as well, which people can get along for free at the website eCommercePodcast.net, or of course if you subscribe to the newsletter, they will be winging their way to you. Just click the links in the email and you will find them. Anna, listen, thank you for coming on to the show. Super enjoyable conversation, loving your background, loving the insights into family, and multi-channel marketing, not multi-level marketing, multi-channel marketing. And I loved your ideas about stories, using Facebook meta ads to sort of tell story, and build your brand that way. I think it's very clever. So genuinely appreciate you coming on the show. Huge thanks.
Thanks very much.
No, but thank you. Now, also a big shout out to today's show sponsor, the e-commerce cohort. Remember to check out their free training, just check out them out. It's all at ecommercecohort.com. More information in there. Come join me in there. It's great fun. Also, be sure to follow the e-commerce podcast wherever you get your podcasts from, because of course we have more great conversations lined up, and I don't want you to miss any of them. And in case no one has told you yet today, let me be the first to tell you, you are awesome. Yes, you are. Created awesome. It's just a burden you have to bear. Anna has to bear it. I've got to bear it. You've got to bear it as well. Now, the e-commerce podcast is produced by Orion Media. You can find our entire archive of episodes on your favorite podcast app. The team that makes this show possible is the wonderful Sadaf Bainon and Tanya Hutzalek. Our theme song was written by Josh Edmondson. And as I mentioned, if you would like to read the transcript or show notes, head to the website ecommercepodcast.net. That's it from me. That's it from Anna. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a fantastic week wherever you are in the world. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.